thank you for coming out. Thank you to Chuck and Dewey and Alan, everybody that went. It's a lot goes into planning an event, and I just want to thank them for doing that. And you all could be in a dozen other places tonight, enjoying the evening, doing something fun, but you came here to get all this dumped in your lap. But I feel like all of us here are definitely understanding as we're coming into this election period, probably one of the most important presidential elections, that we're not only just concerned about the direction of the country, but the actual survival of our country, and that's been said over and over again. And when you look out and you survey what's going on across the country, all these different movements, you've got the Islamic movement, the progressive, the leftist, the Marxist, the socialist, the racist, the globalists. It's like they're all out there using different programs, using different issues to engage in a full-on assault on Americans. And actually, if you get down to the base level, they're after your God-given freedom. Okay? And I feel like the most important issue, when I look at immigration, it's all-encompassing. It touches on national security, personal safety, our health care, the economy, the culture, our education. And I know we're not all here, we're not immigrant bashing tonight if you want to know about this program, if you're concerned about it. Probably all of us would back any immigrant coming to this country for the right reasons. Number one, they want to be an American. They want to taste the freedoms that we still have. But I think everybody in this room should also be fighting to keep anybody out that wants to come for nefarious reasons. And those would include taking advantage of our welfare system, replacing the Constitution with Sharia law, and then the terrorists that just flat out, they want to kill us. So when I step up and look at this from a high altitude perspective, two of the movements I see that are heavily involved are the globalist movement, the ones that want open borders, multiculturalism. You've got George Soros that's backing this. And these people are big money. Is it sitting on me? You have my permission to. But there's big money to be made in refugee resettlement. Okay, you've got Chamber of Commerce that's involved. You have big corporations. These volunteer agencies are actually they're making money. They make money per head of every refugee they settle, up to about, say, $2,000 a head. And they are settling them specifically where there's cheap labor. And this is all happening while we have 93 million Americans out of work. So that's that side. Then you have the global Islamic movement that is through the United Nations, which is heavily influenced by the Operation of Islamic Cooperation. I'm just going to tell you real quick, it's just going to be a story about refugee resettlement, how I got interested in it, and then I'm just going to tell you how it works real quick and who's involved. I'm a nurse working down the road at a pretty big hospital, was working in a procedural unit a couple years ago. And when we would do pre-op, I was finding almost every day, we would need either telephonic translation or a live translator to be able to get the information we needed for the anesthesiologist and all that. And I just started asking, especially if they had a family member, that could speak English. I would say, because I was honestly just curious. I said, where did you come from? Or how did you get here? And they would say IOM. I heard this acronym over and over. And so that night I went home, and like anybody does that doesn't know anything, you go to what? You go to Google, right? I Googled it, and it stands for International Organization for Migration. They are the logistical arm for the United Nations. They move those refugees. They fly them into our country to refugee processing centers. And the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, Filippo Grandi, he chooses 95% of who comes to our country. We used to do that prior to the 1990s. We Americans were actually smart enough, to choose who would come to our country. Maybe we were choosing people that actually align themselves with the foundation of our country, the Judeo-Christian foundation, but not now. The United Nations is doing that. So the UNHCR, when you read articles, that's what, it's UNHCR, that's who we're talking about. He refers those people on to Ann Richards, who is the Assistant Secretary of State for Population, Refugees, and Migration. And then I just think of this like an assembly line. They just send them on to Department of Homeland Security, which everybody knows doesn't work. All right, they're using a fundamentally flawed process. They're not safe. Everybody knows it. Then they go to Department of Health and Human Services to be screened for different diseases. But I'm wondering, what does it matter? You know, because they're bringing people here who have TB and HIV. That does not bar them from coming to our country. Pardon me, got to get a drink. And I want to talk a little bit about TB. There's different, we have 3 different versions of it. You've got either active TB, a latent TB, or multi-drug resistant TB. And I could talk for a while on that, but I'm just going to talk specifically about the multi-drug resistant TB that these refugees have, that their kids will have, go to school with your kids and your grandkids. One case costs about $130,000 to treat. It's a 1 year of treatment. Starts with injections, and you have a handful of medicine to take. And we're dealing right now, I mean, in the healthcare system now, we deal with MRSA and VRE, these different, super bugs, and we've gotten them because Americans, we can't take antibiotics for 2 weeks. So I'm thinking, how are these people from third world countries going to take a handful of medicine for a year that has side effects? And I'm just wondering, what is that going to do? TB is a horrible disease, very contagious if it's in the lungs. It's airborne. So just keep that in your mind, just to help you sleep good tonight.
Thank you.
Anyway, then they're sent onto the planes. They link up with IOM. They're brought over here to refugee processing centers, and that's where they link up with the 9 volunteer agencies that are called VOLAGs. There are 9 of them. 6 of them are religiously affiliated, and they are barred from sharing any faith with these refugees. Because of tax dollars. Your tax dollars are used 90%, they fund 90% of these resettlement costs for these nonprofits, yet these nonprofits are constantly asking for donations. So just don't forget, they're making money there. So once they're here, then there's 350, well, let me tell you one story too. One story about not being able to share the gospel, and this kind of goes with what John was talking about. I just saw this story down in Savannah, where they had settled a family of 8 in Savannah, 6 kids and the 2 parents, and they interviewed a pastor down there from a liberal, I guess it was PC USA Church, and he was grinning ear to ear, just saying, you know what, we got these people settled, got their food for them, and then we even linked them up with a local mosque, and we're driving them to the mosque. And I'm thinking, are we not proud enough of our God that we can't tell people about Christ? I just couldn't believe that. To me, I thought we are so upside down right now. So getting back to the process, 350 different subcontractors work with these 9 volunteer agencies. They're the ones that actually bring them to your community without your knowledge. Nobody asks you. They're supposed to be telling your elected officials, but that's not happening. So they've got 3 to 6 months. These refugees get to your town. They can take all the federal, state, and local welfare right off the bat. And if they do not get a job, then you're still taking care of their welfare that falls to the local taxpayer. So after about 3 to 6 months, that subcontractor leaves. The local taxpayer picks up the welfare from there on out. And that's basically kind of how it works. Just real quick, I want to tell you who's taking advantage of this program. Number one is going to be those people that they're just economic migrants. They want to come because they want the money. And they're not fleeing from persecution. The other group is the mostly Muslim males, I would say, that following the Hijra. And that's a command by Muhammad to go into these non-Muslim lands to take as many wives, make a bunch of children, because it's all a game of demographics. They are trying to increase their number so that they can then politically dominate that region. And we're seeing that here. I say a great case in point is going to be London, England, where you have Sadiq Khan. He's a Muslim. He's now the Muslim of London, England, of all places. It happened because there were decades of multiculturalism, open borders there. And I just want to make a point, too, of saying that I think the Hijra has been happening, subtly over many years. But because of this great big influx we're having because of the refugees, I think it is waking us up. It's supposed to be subtle, not meant to elicit some type of big response, okay? But it is, because we're seeing it. We're seeing what's happening in Europe. It's plain to see. We are now on the same path, and it makes, no sense. Along with the increase in Muslim males is going to be the sexual assaults. I'm not going to even go there. Everybody knows what's going on. The last I will say is about the terrorists. And I just want to quote the 9/11 Commission. For terrorists, travel documents are as important as weapons, because they must travel clandestinely to meet, to train, to plan, to case targets, and then gain access for attack. International travel for a terrorist is very dangerous, because they must surface, travel through regulated channels, present themselves to border security, or they must try to circumvent those inspection points. And I'm thinking, what does refugee resettlement do? I mean, it gives them total protected travel, comfortable travel. They get here, they've got their house paid for, food paid for, education, health care, and you're paying for it. I mean, if you look and see in Europe what happened, there's 5,000 some Islamic State operatives there, probably more. And if you consider what happened in Syria at the end of last year, Islamic State now has passport-making technology. They're not making fake passports. They've got real passports. They have government access to, biographical data of these Syrians, the fingerprint information. So they are good to go. And Comey said, I know it's hard for me to talk about Comey because he's got a bad taste in everybody's mouth right now. But a couple weeks ago, he was at a cybersecurity conference in New York. And he said, we are going to see a terrorist diaspora that nobody can just imagine. And these guys are going to be able to go anywhere they want to go. And now we're looking at, I think we shouldn't be taking anybody from any terrorist sponsoring nation. And now we need to be concerned about Europe as well, because there's just, they're all over. And I don't know that we do have plans to train our law enforcement, to get extra law enforcement that it's going to take to, watch these people. And John's organization is the only one I know that actually trains law enforcement, to identify, the jihadi. So that's it. There you have it. That's it in a nutshell. And it's just, am I about out of time? Can I still talk? Let me take a few more minutes. Because I want to encourage you guys. I don't want to leave you just with all this crap in your lap and then walk away. Okay?
That's what we did.
That's what you guys did. That's why I'm ending up here. Okay, so first of all, I want to say this program is infuriating to me. And it doesn't surprise me Obama is doing this. What surprises me, what's infuriating to me, is that our Republican leadership has done nothing to stop it, even though they've had, many opportunities to. In 2 weeks, they could write a bill and say, look, we want to defund this. They're not doing it. And just like they're saying, they are not obeying their oath of office. Our military does it. Our law enforcement does it. They are protecting our Constitution from enemies, both foreign and domestic, and our elected officials are not doing it, except for a handful. So I'm going to stand here as a free citizen and say that I don't think they're patriotic. I question their patriotism. I question whether they're fit for office. And I think we all should be saying that, and that's the one thing I want to say to all these organizations. They're all after something that you have. And it's personal. They're all after something you have. They can't take it from you. Only you can give it to them. This very thing they want, they fear the most. And that's your freedom of speech. Okay, you look at Trump. Trump, yeah, he's rich, but that's not what got him where he is. The reason he is the nominee for the President of the United States for the Republican Party, I believe, is because he used his freedom of speech and he spoke truth. He spoke simple truth, and that motivated millions of Americans, because we're just aching for somebody to stand up and speak truth and then not apologize for it. You have that same power, just like he does. You need to increase your sphere of influence, and it can be done. Use that freedom of speech to wake Americans up. We can wake the Americans up. We can wake that sleeping giant. And then people like Trump can do the motivating of that sleeping giant. Okay, but we've got to wake people up because we've hit the snooze button over and over and over again. We can't do that anymore. We cannot hit that button one more time. So I'm just saying, these movements basically want you to submit to their ideologies, want you to submit, they want to control you. So my only question for you tonight is, are you going to kneel or are you going to stand and fight?